The door slammed, shattering the silence. Raymond walked into the diner like he was storming a place. Dressed in a flawless dark suit, Italian shoes, and an unreadable expression, he stood out entirely. The smell of burnt bacon, the scrape of a spatula on the grill, the old radio playing cheap jazz, none of it belonged to his world. And yet, he sat down. "Back table, please," he said quietly to the surprised waiter, not removing his dark sunglasses. Ray's diner was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and in that moment everyone came to know him. But he ignored the stares. His eyes had already been caught by something else. There, at the third table to the left, a woman with a white apron folded at the waist was cutting a pancake into small pieces. She smiled as she gently pushed a fork toward the mouth of a boy in a wheelchair. The boy didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. She didn't even know the boy's name, but something in his gaze reminded her of the son she lost in the tragedy. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way he spoke. With a small smile, she pulled the plate closer to him, as if to say, "You don't have to ask." Raymond clenched his hands around the cheap cloth napkin, fingers tensed like they were holding more than just fabric. It was memory, it was absence, it was doubt. Those eyes. The boy's eyes, quiet in the corner of the diner, head down and thin shoulders hunched, were like an echo from somewhere inside him, like a painting he'd tried to erase from his mind, but that remained, blurred, persistent. He looked away for a moment, trying to push down the uneasy feeling rising in his chest, but it was no use. His eyes returned, drawn like a magnet. He ran a hand over his face, trying to pull himself together, looked again. It was just a coincidence. It had to be. But his heart wasn't convinced. Something inside him, something stronger than logic, started pulsing with a strange urgency. An urgency he hadn't felt in years. Because now, in that ordinary afternoon moment, he couldn't take his eyes off the scene. How did I end up here? Raymond wondered, leaning against the worn seat of the diner booth. He wiped his forehead like the answer might be there. I was just passing through. Was it a coincidence? Fate? He asked himself, eyes fixed on the woman and child. The waitress, Serena, according to the name stitched on her uniform, was young, maybe around 30. Dark-haired, sun-kissed skin, hair tied back carelessly, eyes of someone who had cried more than they'd spoken. But she was kind. Every movement she made seemed to carry silent purpose. The boy, about 8 or 9, had neatly trimmed brown hair, a slightly slouched posture, and a medical bracelet on his wrist. His legs were frail, unmoving, but his smiles, it was whole, genuine. With every bite she fed him, he blinked as if to say thank you without words. Raymond looked away. "What can I get you, sir?" the waiter asked nervously. "Black coffee and pancakes, with syrup," he replied, without glancing at the menu. The waiter nodded, still trying to make sense of what a man like that was doing there. Raymond pulled out his phone and typed a message. "Matthew. I need a full report on the waitress named Serena and the boy with her. Now." Matthew was his personal security and trusted assistant. Within minutes, the investigation would begin. Raymond wasn't one to act on impulse, but this wasn't impulse. It was something older, deeper. It was instinct. Serena gently wiped the boy's mouth with almost motherly care. "Slow down, Daniel, or the syrup's going to drip again," she said with the tenderness of someone who had repeated the same gesture for years. Daniel nodded slightly, eyes still on the plate. He didn't talk much, only made occasional sounds, but Serena seemed to understand them perfectly. "Want more milk?" she asked, lifting the mug. Daniel nodded with a soft smile. Raymond remained at a distance, completely still. His eyes were fixed on the scene in front of him, as if the world around them had vanished. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, almost instinctual. That woman, with her plain looks and simple manner, unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. And the boy. There was something about him that stirred a strange, almost painful unease, something that disturbed buried memories. Then, it happened. Daniel turned his head and looked straight at him. It lasted just a second, a single exact second. But in that moment their eyes met, and time seemed to freeze. that look. A silent, brutal collision, striking Raymond dead in the chest, as if something he had locked away for years had suddenly been exposed. He turned his gaze sharply, like someone trying to escape a cliff's edge, grabbed the coffee mug and brought it to his lips, trying to mask it. At that moment, Walter, his driver, a tall, discreet man in his 50s, entered the diner with quiet steps. He gave a subtle nod. Raymond stood up abruptly, leaving his coffee half finished, as if the air inside had become too heavy. He walked straight to Walter. "Get her full name, address, background. Also see if there are medical records for the boy. I want everything. Today." "Yes, Mr. Cole." "And Walter, complete discretion. No one can know. Understand?" "Understood." Without another word, Raymond left the diner. He didn't look back. He didn't let himself. But something inside him had shifted, and there would be no going back. Across the dining room, Serena felt a chill. She saw the man leave. There was something about him, different, not threatening, but cold, intense. She lowered her eyes, picked up a napkin and wiped Daniel's mouth again. "I think he was curious about us, huh?" she whispered, trying to sound casual. Daniel let out a soft sound, almost a muffled giggle. She tousled his hair. "Come on, it's time for your meds." As she wheeled the chair toward the back of the diner, Raymond watched from the black car parked across the street. The tinted window reflected his own face, a mix of restlessness and something he hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. Why had that boy affected him so deeply? Why did his eyes echo a forgotten memory? And more than that, why did that woman with her tired hands and steady steps seem to carry a part of his story? Hours later, back in his silent penthouse atop the city's most expensive building, Raymond stared at an old picture frame. The photo showed his wife, who had passed away 7 years earlier, smiling beside a little boy in a wheelchair. The boy had the same eyes. The exact same eyes he'd seen in that diner. He ran his hand across the glass of the photo. "It's possible, isn't it?" he murmured to himself. His phone buzzed. Message from Matthew. Got the full name, Serena Carter, widow. Been working at Ray's Diner for 5 years. No registered children. The boy seems to have appeared with her 4 years ago. No official adoption. Raymond's jaw tightened. The world around him went quiet. That night, for the first time in years, he fell asleep thinking about someone other than himself. And without understanding why, he dreamed of a woman who shared pancakes with a boy, and a man who, maybe, had the chance to fix what he never thought could be healed. The alarm went off at 5 a.m. Serena turned it off with a quick tap before it could wake Daniel. She lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling. The mattress creaked every time she moved, but she was used to it by now. It wasn't discomfort that kept her up. It was fear. Fear of falling short. Fear of not being enough. Fear of failing him. She got up slowly, pulled on the old hoodie hanging over the chair, and walked to the tiny kitchen. The dim light flicked on. The electric kettle started heating water while she sorted the day's pills. 2 white, 1 blue and half a yellow. Everything meticulously recorded in the torn notebook on top of the fridge. Daniel was still asleep, wrapped in a dinosaur print blanket. There was a faint smile on his lips, his body curled slightly to the left side. "Good morning, champ," Serena whispered, brushing her fingers against his forehead. He let out a soft sound, like a cat's purr. "Time to get up, mister. You know what day it is?" She smiled, trying to cheer him up. "Tuesday, and you know what Tuesday means?" Daniel slowly opened his eyes. He looked at her and smiled, the kind of smile that broke down every barrier. Serena knew that boy had suffered more than he could ever say. And still he smiled. She helped him sit up, gently placed the braces on his arms, then bundled him in a coat and laid the blanket over his legs. "Brush your teeth first." "Or no hot chocolate," she teased, and he rolled his eyes. Serena wheeled him to the bathroom. She washed his face, brushed his teeth, then brushed her own. It was a daily dance, and even if it wore her down, she danced with all her heart. Outside, the morning chill made the air dry. Serena carefully rolled up the ramp of the adapted bus. The driver greeted her with a nod, and she replied with a quick smile. Daniel stared out the window, quiet as he did every morning. The same buildings, the same hurried faces, but to him, the repetition brought a strange peace, as if the outside world was saying that for now, everything was still in its place. Serena, sitting beside him, held his hand gently. When the first ray of sun broke through the clouds, she leaned in slightly, smiling. Daniel followed her gaze, raised a finger, and pointed to the sky. A lone bird flew low. He let out a soft giggle, almost imperceptible. The diner still smelled of metal and dawn when Serena wheeled him in through the side entrance. The warm aroma of butter and coffee wrapped around them like a hug. Hank, the raspy-voiced cook with a stained apron, waved from the grill with a tired half-smile. "Thought you were going to leave me all alone today," he said while flipping pancakes. Serena smiled back without needing to reply. Daniel nodded with his eyes. He knew it was Tuesday, and Tuesdays meant chocolate syrup. She settled him at a corner table and prepared a small bowl of fruit, just like always. Then she put on her apron and tied her hair back. The morning kicked off in a whirlwind. Coffee, toast, wrong change, forgotten orders. But Serena moved with grace. She knew the name of every regular. She knew Mrs. Miller liked her milk almost boiling. She knew Mr. Tomlin always asked for 2 sugar packets and pretended to be surprised when she brought them without him asking. From across the room, Daniel watched her closely. He liked seeing her smile even when she was tired. After 10, when the rush slowed, Serena returned to Daniel's table with a plate of small pancakes. "Here you go, champ. Ready to dig in?" Daniel stretched his arms with effort, trying to grab the fork. Serena helped him. "One of these days, you're gonna eat it all by yourself. Then you'll start saying my pancakes are too dry." The boy shook his head slowly. He ate in silence, savoring every bite. She gently wiped his mouth between each one. "Remember that guy from yesterday? The one in the dark suit?" she asked suddenly. "He was looking at you a lot. Weird, right?" Daniel made a questioning sound. "Nothing big, just a strange customer. I just got the feeling he knew you, but that's impossible, right?" Serena went quiet for a moment. She headed to the kitchen to grab more milk, but on the way, something outside the window made her stop. Across the street, a black car was parked, tinted windows, engine running. The same car from the day before. She swallowed hard, not knowing why it made her uneasy. Back at the table, Daniel's head was down. The spoon had slipped from his hand. Serena knelt beside him. "Hey, you okay?" Daniel looked at her. His eyes were wet. Serena gently wiped them with her fingers. "Tired?" He didn't answer. "Want to go home early?" The boy shook his head. She took a deep breath. "Are you thinking about that dream again?" He gently squeezed her hand. Serena closed her eyes. That dream kept coming back. Daniel said he saw a white house with big stairs, a dog, a woman singing, and music playing in the distance. But the woman's face always disappeared when he tried to remember. She never knew how to respond. The dream had started when he was 5, since the day she found him. 4 years ago, Serena had stopped at a gas station on the way home. It was night, pouring rain. She heard a sound coming from behind the dumpster. A boy, soaked, shivering, barely able to speak. He had a necklace with a name, Daniel, and nothing else. The police tried to find the parents. Nothing. No records, no reports, no leads. She tried the adoption system, but no one wanted to take in a child with an unclear disability. And she couldn't leave him behind. It was as if he had been placed there for a reason, for a miracle. So she stayed. With improvised documents, help from a retired social worker, and a lot of hard work, no one knew the whole story. She kept it hidden, because deep down, she knew someone could show up one day and take him away. But she also knew that boy was hers, not by paper, but by love. Daniel picked up the fork again, struggling. "It's okay, Dee. I've got the rest," Serena said calmly. She cut the last pieces and let him eat at his own pace. When he finished, she wiped his mouth with a cloth and rested her forehead against his. "One day all of this is going to make sense, you know. And until then, you just have to trust me." Daniel squeezed her fingers. Serena smiled, but her eyes glistened again. Only she knew the weight of living with a love that could be taken away at any moment. Outside, the black car was still there, and inside it, someone was watching. But that, she didn't know yet. Raymond Cole sat in his private library, surrounded by books he had never read. The previous night had been a long one. He'd spent hours staring at the old photo of his wife holding their young son, a moment frozen in time. There was no denying it. The boy at the diner looked the same. The shape of his face, his eyes, that expression when he smiled, but memory alone couldn't be trusted. Grief was deceptive. It had fooled him before. He remembered the day everything disappeared, the red backpack left on the park ground, the swing still in motion, the nanny's scream swallowed by the wind. That scene played in his mind like a film on a loop. Since then, his life had been marked by uncertainty, and now, staring into eyes so familiar, the pain returned like a cold breeze to the chest. It could all just be a trap, grief disguised as truth. Matthew entered quietly, as he always did. He carried a black folder, the kind Raymond had learned to dread over the years, not for what it physically contained, but for the truths it often delivered. He didn't say a word, just handed it over with a solemn look, the kind that meant everything inside could change everything. Raymond took the folder and opened it with measured hands. He read every line carefully, though his heart was pounding. The name jumped out first: Serena Carter. 31, widow, lived in the modest Meadow Hill neighborhood on the east side of the city. She'd worked at Ray's diner for 5 years. What stood out, however, was what was missing: no formal adoption, no legal connection to the boy. He closed the folder slowly, as if trying to trap its contents inside, away from the growing reality forming in front of him. He walked to the window, as he always did when he needed to steady himself. Below, the city carried on indifferent, unaware that a man who had already lost nearly everything was standing on the edge of something life-altering. Without turning around, he asked what he needed to know most: the boy's name. The answer came dry but heavy with implication: Daniel. The same name as his missing son. No confirmed last name. Just Daniel. Raymond closed his eyes for a moment. 4 years. It had been exactly 4 years since that afternoon in the park. The daytime stopped. When the wind carried away more than leaves, it took his entire world. The red backpack, the swing still moving, the nanny's scream, all of it replayed like an echo he could never silence. He then asked about leads, cameras, photos, anything to confirm or disprove what his gut already screamed. Matthew was direct. Few images, nothing relevant. The diner was small and discreet, their routine simple, quiet, invisible to the world. Raymond stood still for several seconds. He knew the next step would cross a line, but he also knew he couldn't stop. He ordered a DNA sample to be taken, quickly, silently, a toothbrush, a cup, anything with biological traces. He needed proof, not hope. And above all, they couldn't know they were being watched. Matthew nodded and left without a sound, like a ghost trained to move in the shadows. Alone again, Raymond turned to the shelf. He picked up the silver frame that held the only intact photo of his wife, holding their young son. That image was his ruin and his only refuge. The boy's eyes in the photo seemed to stare back at him, and suddenly he whispered, like someone trying to bargain with fate, "What if it really is him?" But the silence of the library offered no answer, only the weight of possibility. 2 days later, Raymond was back at the diner. He wore dark glasses and a simpler coat, trying to seem less like himself. He sat at the same back table, close enough to see Serena and the boy, far enough not to attract attention. Daniel played with a plastic spoon, tapping it lightly against his plate. Serena helped him with the motion. It was automatic but filled with care. "You want to try by yourself today?" she asked. The boy nodded vaguely, attempting to lift his arm. The fork slipped. Serena held his hand and helped. Raymond couldn't take his eyes off them. The way she spoke to the boy, her tone, her patience. She wasn't a nanny, she was more than that. The boy looked happy, and that was the hardest part. Hours later, back in his office, Raymond received a call from Matthew. The DNA test is on its way. We got a cup he used. And Serena? Anything new? Nothing suspicious, but there's something curious. 4 years ago, she showed up with the boy at a public hospital, asking for emergency care. Said she found him alone in the rain. Raymond closed his eyes. And no one investigated. Police filed a report, but it went nowhere. No witnesses, no reports, no public search. Of course, I had already given up. I was dead inside. Silence hung between them for a few seconds. I need to know if it's him, Raymond said, before I do anything. The next day, Raymond returned to the diner once more. This time, Serena recognized him. She approached his table with her notepad in hand. Hello again. Coffee? Yes, please, he replied flatly. You've been coming in a lot lately. You liking the food or here for something else? Raymond slowly raised his eyes. I like watching people. It's an old habit. Serena smiled, a little wary. Well, not much to see around here. Just the same old routine. Sometimes routine is what saves us. She went quiet for a moment, then jotted down his order. I'll get your coffee. As she walked away, Daniel looked at him. Their eyes met for a few seconds. Raymond forced a smile. Daniel answered with another softer one. It shook him again. It was like the boy knew, like blood recognized blood, even without a name, even without a history. Later that day, back at home, Raymond sat in front of the closed piano. He hadn't played in years. He picked up an old photo of his son, 6 years old, brown hair, sharp eyes, the same expression as the boy in the diner. A notification lit up his phone. It was Matthew. DNA, positive match, 99.9%. The boy is your son. Raymond stood still. He didn't feel euphoria or relief. He felt the weight, as if the world had paused to ask, now what? He called Matthew. Get everything ready, but I'm not approaching yet. I need time to think. What do you plan to do, sir? Raymond looked out at the city. I don't know yet, but I'll see her again, and this time I want to understand who she really is. That night, he dreamed of the boy running through a field, something Daniel had never been able to do. In the dream, Serena watched from a distance, and he, Raymond, stood frozen, unsure whether to run to them or be alone one more time. Winter was approaching. The city looked grayer, slower. Raymond Cole sat inside his black car, parked a block from Ray's diner, staring at the reflection of his hand on the steering wheel. He had spent the past few days studying every movement of that woman, Serena Carter, the waitress who, without knowing, was raising his son. The confirmation was there, cold, irrefutable. The DNA test left no room for doubt, and yet Raymond couldn't move. The paper said the boy was his, but his heart, it still stumbled in the void left by the lost years, by the silence that dragged on like thick fog, by the guilt that had never let go. Inside the car, his fingers gripped the steering wheel, unmoving. The fogged window reflected part of his face, tired, aged by sleepless nights and unanswered questions. You going in today? Walter, the driver, asked gently. Raymond pulled his gaze away from the glass and took a deep breath. His answer came low, sluggish. No, not today. At the diner, life moved in small gestures. Serena wiped down one of the back tables while Daniel amused himself with 2 sugar packets. The movement was simple, but his eyes sparkled with the kind of focus only children have, the kind that turns the ordinary into something magnificent. She came closer, curious. What's that going to be? A racetrack? Daniel looked up and smiled, reserved, a rare smile. Only if you're the judge, he said, each syllable carefully formed. Serena blinked in surprise. She sat beside him without thinking. It was unusual to see him talk so much, but something had changed in him lately. He seemed more present, more awake, as if some forgotten spark had returned to life. All right, but I'm strict. You've got to hit every curve. No shortcuts. Like the bus we take, he replied, pausing between words. She smiled, touched. That progress, small as it was, meant everything. She gently tapped his sugar packet with hers, pretending to challenge him. You win. but don't get used to it." He chuckled softly, then fell quiet. For a moment, everything paused. "Serena," he said in a low voice. "Yes, sweetheart." The question came like a slow blade. "Who was my dad?" Serena felt the air grow heavy. She didn't respond immediately. Her gaze faltered. She breathed in, searching for words that wouldn't hurt, but wouldn't lie either. "I don't really know who he was," she answered calmly, looking him in the eye. "But one thing I know, he'd be lucky to have met you." Daniel looked down, thoughtful. Serena wanted to say more, to explain the unexplainable, to pour out her heart. But she couldn't, not when she didn't have all the answers herself. All she could do was what she'd always done, be there, fully, for him. Outside, Raymond watched through the diner window like a man staring at a life he wasn't sure he belonged to, or desperately wished he did. He sat with his hands folded, heart pounding in a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. The scene was simple, a waitress, a boy, sugar packets. But at that moment, it was everything. He saw the exact second the boy struggled to form words, and the woman knelt beside him, her eyes lighting up with something only real love could ignite. It was a routine moment, but to Raymond, it sliced through him like a silent blade. His chest tightened almost physically, a sharp, familiar pain, the pain of too much lost time, of loving and failing, of finally finding what he'd searched for, only to find it too late. Without a word, he opened the car door and stepped out. The cold afternoon air wrapped around him, but he didn't flinch. He walked steadily toward the entrance. No disguise this time, no expensive coat, no sunglasses, just him. Raymond. The doorbell chimed as he stepped inside. Serena, carrying an order to a table, looked up and saw him. Her heart skipped, though she couldn't quite explain why. There was something about this man that unsettled her, like he carried a kind of sorrow she didn't know but somehow recognized. She walked toward him, notepad in hand, trying to hold her composure, to keep to the routine. "Coffee?" she asked in a neutral tone. Raymond met her gaze, heavy but not hostile. "I didn't come for coffee today." She paused. It felt final, like a curtain was about to fall, like the moment she had been quietly dreading had finally arrived. "Then why are you here?" His eyes drifted to the table where Daniel still played, his face peaceful, unaware of the storm brewing between the two adults watching him. "I need to speak with you in private." Serena crossed her arms, defensive. "If this is about what I think it is, it won't happen here." Raymond nodded slowly. "Then tell me where and when." She studied him for a moment. There was something in his eyes. It wasn't threat, it was pain. A quiet pain she knew too well. She took a breath, following her gut. "After my shift, out back." He gave a small nod and sat down in his usual corner booth. 2 hours later, the city had sunk into twilight. Serena pushed Daniel through the side door, his coat tight around him against the wind. The street was empty, only a faint radio from a distant truck cutting the silence. Raymond stood beside his car, still, like one wrong move might shatter everything. "He needs to rest," Serena said, stopping beside him. "Say what you came to say." Raymond stepped closer to the wheelchair. His eyes fell on the boy, quiet now, nearly asleep. "His name is Daniel," Serena nodded, wary. "It is." "Do you know where he came from?" Her fingers tightened on the chair's handles. "I found him on a rainy night, alone, curled up in fear, soaked to the bone. No one around, no papers, just him." There was a silence that held centuries. Raymond breathed deeply. "He's my son." Serena's face tensed. "What?" "Daniel is my biological son. He vanished 4 years ago, without a trace. The police found nothing. I searched until I couldn't anymore, and then time crushed me. But now, he's here. With you." The words came as a whisper, but hit like a bomb. She felt the ground shift. Her grip tightened. A tremble passed through her. "You're saying—" "I did a DNA test, it's confirmed." The silence returned, thicker now, layered. Serena's eyes drifted for a second. "And what do you want? To take him away?" Her voice shook, afraid of his answer. Raymond lowered his voice, almost a confession. I don't know what I want yet. I just know I can't pretend I don't know. Not anymore. Daniel watched them, confused but calm, as if he sensed something important happening but couldn't name it. Serena knelt beside him, met his eyes. It's okay, baby. We're just talking. It'll pass, all right? The boy gently touched her arm, a simple gesture, full of meaning. Raymond saw it, saw the bond, and something broke inside him. A beautiful kind of pain, if that exists. A pain woven with gratitude and regret. You took care of him, Raymond said sincerely, when no one else did. Serena didn't look away. I did what any decent person would have done. No, he said. You didn't, Serena. Most would have handed him over to the system. You stayed. She narrowed her eyes, unsure if that was praise or accusation. Maybe both. Maybe neither. I didn't want to be a mom. It wasn't in the plan, but he needed me. Raymond stepped forward, his throat dry. And me? He needed me too. And I wasn't there. Serena turned away, swallowing emotion. That's not my fault. I know. Silence again. So what do we do now? Raymond asked, nearly voiceless. She clutched the chair tighter. I don't know, but don't bring lawyers, don't bring threats, because he's my son too. Raymond stepped back, as if honoring the line she'd drawn, as if finally understanding that to have his son again, he might have to accept he wasn't the only one who loved him. I didn't come to fight. Then why did you come? The question lingered. Raymond looked at Daniel, then at Serena. Because seeing him with you gave me hope that maybe I can fix something, even if it's just myself. Serena felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to say she was broken too, that she had ghosts, that she didn't know what to do either. But she said nothing, just pushed the chair and walked away. Raymond stood alone on the cold sidewalk. It wasn't just the absence that hurt, it was time. The time he couldn't get back, the time that now depended on someone he barely knew, but who somehow had become a central part of the life of the child he'd searched for. The next morning he returned to the diner, sat at the same booth, ordered coffee he didn't drink. Minutes passed, customers came and went. The clink of silverware echoed softly. But Serena and Daniel didn't show, and there at that cold table, Raymond finally understood what it meant to wait. Because for the first time in years, he wasn't waiting for answers. He was waiting for someone. And that kind of waiting changes everything. That morning, Serena avoided the mirror. The bathroom glass was still fogged from the shower, but that wasn't why she couldn't face herself. It was everything inside her, a dense mix of fear, exhaustion, and uncertainty. The conversation with Raymond the night before echoed like a fresh wound. The words, "He's my son," looped in her mind, a cruel whisper following her every move. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff. Caring for Daniel for 4 years had changed everything. He wasn't just a boy she had rescued. He was her home, her purpose, her healing. And now, suddenly, someone appeared and said, "He's mine." As if all the love poured into him, the sleepless nights, the small victories in his speech and health, meant nothing. The kettle began to whistle, and Serena rushed to turn off the stove. She calmly sorted Daniel's morning pills, with the mechanical precision of someone who had done it hundreds of times. The boy sat at the kitchen table, staring into his cereal, stirring it, but not eating, his shoulders hunched, his expression distant. "Do you want something else?" Serena asked, trying to soften the tension. Daniel shook his head, a slow, stiff motion. "Did you sleep well?" He shrugged. His voice came out low, barely there. "Are you hurting? A little?" Serena knelt beside him, the way she always did when she wanted to show she was on his level. Not just another adult trying to take control, but someone ready to truly listen. "Yesterday. Did that scare you?" Daniel hesitated. His eyes shifted to the wall, then back to her. There was confusion in them, the kind that understands but can't yet process. "He said he's my dad." Those words, spoken by Daniel, cut even deeper. Serena held his hand, caught between the instinct to protect him and the ache of possibly having to let him go. I know. Is it true? She wanted to give a firm answer, to say no with certainty or yes with calm. But the truth was something else, something that couldn't be answered without breaking something inside her or inside him. I don't know, sweetheart. But if it is, do you want to meet him? Daniel was silent, his fingers pressed into the edge of the table. His gaze fell. Then he whispered, I want to know why he disappeared. Serena swallowed hard. There was no easy answer, and she knew Raymond didn't have one either. Across the city, Raymond Cole stood motionless in front of the fireplace in his library. The fire burned low as if it too was tired. On the table, the black folder with the DNA results lay open. Beside it, a cup of untouched coffee. And next to that, an old photo of baby Daniel in his mother's arms, the last real memory of the family he once had. Raymond had stood there for hours in silence. Time seemed frozen. The truth was out. Daniel was his son. But what did he do with that truth? How did he carry it without causing more damage? Matthew entered the room without knocking. His face carried weight and urgency. We need to talk, sir. Raymond took a long time to respond, not out of disrespect, but introspection. Go on. Serena's afraid. She went to a social worker, gathered documents. Looks like she's getting ready to defend herself legally. Raymond lifted his gaze slowly. There was no anger, no surprise, just understanding. I don't blame her. Matthew hesitated. You're going to let it go? I haven't decided. She thinks you'll take him away. Raymond stood slowly, as if every joint carried more weight than it should. I thought about it, I won't lie. But the boy looks at me like I'm a stranger. And right now, and that's what I am. Matthew stepped closer, voice softer. He's not just your son anymore. He's both of yours now. Raymond didn't answer. He just stared into the fire. But Matthew's words lingered in the air, a truth he hadn't yet made peace with. I lost my chance to be a father, and maybe now I've lost the chance to start again. The next afternoon, Serena sat on the back porch of their building. The wind was sharp, late autumn's chill settling in. Daniel sat in her lap, wrapped in a blue blanket. He was quiet, eyes fixed on the leaves dancing across the pavement. What would you do if you could choose? Serena asked, not looking at him. Daniel took a few seconds, then answered with the honesty only a child could offer. I wish you two could meet, without fighting. A knot formed in Serena's throat. And would you go with him? Daniel looked up. Only if you come too. She hadn't expected that. Not like this. What Daniel wanted wasn't to choose between two worlds, but to bring them together. And maybe she was wrong in thinking love had to be divided. Maybe it could be multiplied. The next day, Raymond stood outside the diner for several long minutes. His hands were sweating. His heart raced. Walking through that door felt harder than any boardroom negotiation, any corporate crisis. Because here there were no masks, only history and wounds. He stepped inside. Serena saw him as soon as the door shut. She walked over, arms crossed. I know you want to hit me, Raymond said bluntly. No, I want you to tell me what you're going to do. Nothing, for now. But we need to talk, honestly. No masks. Talk. Raymond drew a deep breath. When Daniel disappeared, I died inside. My wife, she couldn't take it. She got sick, and I shut down. I became a man who survived but didn't live. I couldn't keep searching. I couldn't believe he'd come back. Serena met his eyes. I found him in the rain, Raymond. Cold, hungry, terrified. I called the police. I waited. No one came for him. I was far away, angry at the world, thinking life had taken everything from me. And now you show up, wanting what? Redemption. Raymond didn't flinch. I didn't come to take him from you. I just want to know who my son became. Serena was quiet, then answered, steady and firm. He's kind, smart. He's afraid of the dark, but loves the moon. He dreams of a house he doesn't remember and a dog he's never seen. He says he was born twice, the first time when he lost everything, the second when he found me. Raymond lowered his eyes. You were his light. And now? Raymond exhaled. I want him to let me try being a father, but only if you let me. She smiled, but there was bitterness in it. This isn't about me letting you. It's about him choosing. The next morning, Daniel woke early. Serena noticed the difference before he even spoke. He dressed himself, asked to brush his teeth before breakfast, said he wanted to go out, to see the world. She got everything ready and took him to the park. As she pushed his wheelchair, they came to a bench by the lake. Daniel stared at the water, silent. Mom? Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to leave? Serena's stomach turned. The question hurt, because it carried a child's oldest, purest fear, being left behind. She touched his shoulder gently. Never. I'm not going anywhere, even if the whole world changes. Daniel nodded. Like that answer was all he needed to breathe. I want to see him. I want to ask why he left me. I'll be right by your side. That evening, Raymond arrived at Serena's building. He looked different, wore simple clothes. He was alone, no driver, no security, no power. Serena waited at the door. He wants to see you. Raymond swallowed hard. And you? I'll be there, but the moment is his. They went up together. Daniel sat on the couch, hands resting on his lap. When Raymond entered, their eyes met. He walked slowly, kneeling before the boy. Hi, Daniel. Hi. I'm your dad. Daniel didn't answer right away. He just looked at him. I know it feels strange, but I looked for you. Not enough. Not the right way. But I never stopped loving you. Daniel studied him. It was like looking at a distant reflection, familiar and foreign all at once. Why didn't you come sooner? Because I was lost and scared. I was scared too. Raymond nodded, eyes glassy. You were braver than I was. Daniel reached out and touched his face. Raymond took the small hand in his own, holding it gently. Serena watched in silence. This wouldn't erase the past, but maybe it could be the beginning of something new. That night, not much was said, but the silence between them wasn't empty. It was peace, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The night was warm for that time of year. Serena walked along the main street sidewalk beside Raymond Cole. The city seemed suspended in a strange kind of quiet, as if it knew something delicate was about to unfold. They had just left the doctor's office. Daniel was asleep in the back seat, exhausted after another round of tests and evaluations. Walter followed behind in the car, close enough to assist but far enough to give space. For the first time in weeks, Raymond and Serena walked side by side without the weight of past arguments. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was contemplative, like they were both trying to understand when exactly everything had changed. The doctor had been clear, Daniel's progress was remarkable. And it wasn't just because of medication or therapy, it was the care, the constant presence, the hope that was slowly starting to grow. Raymond looked straight ahead, but the doctor's words echoed in his mind. He knew much of that progress had a name, Serena. And oddly enough, he felt he had contributed too, quietly, still unsure of where he belonged in it all. They stopped on the sidewalk. He took a breath. The moment wasn't rehearsed, but it felt inevitable. He turned to her, a mixture of caution and honesty in his eyes. He wanted to say he no longer wanted to be an occasional visitor. He wanted to be a father, for real, present, imperfect, but there. Serena watched him silently. It was a conversation she'd known would come eventually, but that didn't make it easier, because it wasn't just about him. It was about Daniel, about what the boy would choose, and about what she was willing to allow. When Raymond finally spoke, it was with quiet sincerity. No promises, just a desire to learn, to try, to show up. Serena didn't rush to respond, but when she did, it was clear. The decision would be Daniel's, and Raymond would have to accept it, whatever it was. He nodded slowly. He knew there was no other way. The next morning, Daniel was restless. Colored pencils were scattered across the table, but the paper in front of him remained blank. He wheeled himself around the apartment as if searching for something lost, or maybe something new. Serena watched him closely. She knew how to read his moods. "Everything okay?" she asked gently, approaching. Daniel was quiet for a few seconds, as if trying to reach a memory he couldn't quite grasp. He said softly that he wanted to go back to the park. Serena didn't need to ask why. She grabbed the jackets, called Raymond, and for the first time, the three of them went out together, not out of necessity but by choice. The park was nearly empty that morning. A few children played in the distance, their laughter blending with the soft rustle of wind through the trees. Serena sat on a bench with a book on her lap, though she didn't read a word. She just wanted to be close. Raymond pushed Daniel's wheelchair down a pebbled path. The boy watched everything in silence, as if each leaf, each bench, each sound was a piece of an old puzzle. They stopped at a small lake. Raymond knelt beside his son and started to talk about how they used to come there with Daniel's mom, about grape juice and oatmeal cookies, about how Daniel loved to toss stones into the water. Daniel smiled at the mention of grape juice. It was still his favorite. There was something sacred in that moment, a quiet reclaiming of memories, some forgotten, some merely asleep. They sat in silence until Daniel asked the question Raymond had always known would come, but had never known how to answer. "Why did it take you so long?" Raymond didn't try to explain too much. He just told the truth. He pulled away. He was afraid, angry, filled with regret. But now he wanted to try again, differently. Daniel looked towards Serena in the distance. Then, with the simplicity only children possess, he said he wanted both of them. He wanted to be a real family, together. Raymond needed a moment to hold back the emotion. All he could say was, "Thank you." That night, back at home, Serena was making dinner when Daniel came up and asked to help. He stirred the sauce, clumsy but careful. He said he had talked with Raymond, that he'd made his choice. Serena stopped and looked at him, asked what Raymond had said. Daniel answered with a quiet smile. "He said he'll try." She ran a hand through his hair, tenderly, her pride silent but full. Her son seemed to understand more about life than most adults ever would. That night they picked an old movie, sat on the living room rug and shared a single blanket. Serena on one side, Raymond on the other, Daniel between them, resting his head on his mother's shoulder. During the credits, Raymond broke the silence with a question, simple but meaningful. "If you could be anywhere in the world, where would you be?" Daniel looked at them both and answered without hesitation, "Here." Days later, Raymond did something unprecedented. He took the day off, cancelled everything. He wanted to take Daniel to the hospital where he was born, told Serena he needed to close a chapter. The hospital felt smaller than Raymond remembered. Daniel looked around the white halls with wide eyes, trying to recognize something. Raymond pointed. "That's where you were born. That's where I held you for the first time. You fit in just one arm." Daniel looked down at his own arms, silently. Raymond told the rest, how everything had fallen apart. But now, here they were, together. And that was what mattered. They hugged in the middle of the hallway. Serena watched, eyes full. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. On the way home, Daniel asked to stop by the market. He wanted to cook. Later that evening, he walked into the living room with a notebook in his hands. He had written a recipe, with help from the woman at the corner store, grape juice and pancakes. They cooked together, laughed, burned one pancake, made a mess of the kitchen. They ate on the porch. The night was calm. Serena watched the two of them exchanging jokes. Daniel's laughter filled the space. She looked up at the sky. For the first time in a long while, there was no fear, only peace. 2 weeks had passed since the visit to the hospital, and the rhythm of life had started to change. Serena Carter and Daniel's routine was no longer theirs alone. Raymond Cole had become a regular presence, helping with groceries, attending medical appointments, and finding quiet, consistent ways to build something new. Not just with his son, but with Serena too. It was like relearning how to exist as a family, even if that family hadn't formed in the usual way. That Monday, Serena was walking home from work, a bag of vegetables in hand when she stopped in front of her building. The facade, once peeling and dull, had been cleaned and freshly painted. The hallway now glowed with new lighting. The front desk had been renovated. She stepped inside slowly, confused, climbing the stairs with cautious steps. When she opened the apartment door, Daniel was waiting with a wide smile and bright eyes. He called to her excitedly, pointing to the living room window. On the sidewalk, Raymond stood looking up, hands in his pockets, trying to appear casual. Serena followed her son's gaze, still unsure of what was happening. Then she noticed the details. The building looked different. The entrance hall, the windows, everything had been cleaned or repaired, as if someone had rewritten part of that place's story. She turned to Raymond with an expression somewhere between surprise and amusement. He spoke before she could ask. He had simply taken care of a few upgrades, talked to the landlord, followed all the rules. Nothing extravagant, nothing bought, just improved. Serena tried to keep a straight face but couldn't help a half smile. It was so typical of him, doing good while acting like he was just fixing what should have already been right. Raymond smiled back. He knew she resisted being helped, but he also understood now. It was just her way of guarding what she had built with so much effort. From a distance, Daniel watched them, quiet. He was learning, without being taught, what care looked like, what affection felt like when shown through simple acts instead of grand declarations. The next day, Raymond showed up earlier than usual. Serena found it strange, but before she could ask, he told her he'd moved up his plans with Daniel. He had a surprise. It didn't involve airplanes, just a little soil and patience. On the drive, Daniel adjusted a crooked cap on his head, curiosity lighting his face. They arrived at a large piece of land on the city's outskirts. The view opened to a calm lake. In the center of the lot, a structure was taking shape, fresh cement, rising walls, the start of something. Raymond explained it would be a house. With an accessible entrance, bedrooms on the first floor, a big kitchen and a tree in the backyard, just for Daniel, to hang whatever he wanted. Serena said nothing at first. There was something vulnerable in it, something that touched a part of her she still wasn't sure how to guard. Raymond was clear. It wasn't about buying something, it was about building. He wasn't forcing anything. He was offering a place where fear wouldn't dictate the future. She looked at the land again. He was impossible. But in that moment she knew he was trying, and for the right reasons. In the following days, Raymond became a frequent figure at the diner. Serena insisted on working. She said it kept her grounded, alive. He respected that but helped where he could. He fixed the coffee machine, renovated the accessible bathroom, improved the kitchen's ventilation. Her co-workers started to notice. Hank, the cook, asked if he was the new boss. Serena joked that he was just someone who annoyed her by doing good things. But Hank wasn't convinced. He said he saw the way Raymond looked at her. And that kind of thing, you couldn't fake. Even Serena couldn't deny it convincingly. Meanwhile, Daniel was changing too. More talkative, more confident. He tried dressing himself, organizing his books, writing words. To Serena, each little gesture was a quiet miracle. One evening, while putting away toys, Daniel paused and asked if he could call him Dad. She hadn't expected it, but she answered gently. If that's what he felt, then yes. Daniel simply nodded, with the calm certainty of a child who knows what he wants. That weekend, Raymond took them to a large bookstore downtown. He told them to choose whatever they wanted. Daniel disappeared into the aisles. Serena found an old cookbook and smiled, remembering her grandmother. Raymond, without hesitation, told her to take it, not out of obligation, but because he liked seeing those memories in her eyes. Serena started to look at him differently. Raymond hadn't changed completely, but he was changing, and maybe she was too. On the way back, as they stood in front of the building, he hesitated at the door, said he wanted to ask something. He wanted to know if she believed they could start over, not just as parents, but as something more. Serena thought for a moment before answering. She wasn't sure about the future, but right now she trusted him, and that, she said, was more than he probably thought he deserved. She walked inside with Daniel, and before closing the door, wished him good night. Raymond stayed there a moment longer, smiling at the closed door. That night, Serena dreamed of a house with big windows. Daniel ran free in the yard. Raymond tended to the flowers. It was a simple dream, but full of life. She woke to the sound of gentle rain tapping the window, and a quiet smile on her face. The bonds that once seemed impossible were now forming effortlessly, as if they'd always been there, just waiting for the right time to take shape. It was Sunday. The scent of pancakes filled Serena Carter's small apartment. Daniel stood in the kitchen wearing a yellow apron stained with chocolate, his face lit up with concentration as he stirred the batter. Beside him, Raymond Cole cracked eggs with the seriousness of someone solving an equation. Serena, leaning against the counter, watched them with a smile that needed no explanation. That morning, the kitchen felt alive. The warm smell of batter in the air, the sound of laughter mixed with clinking utensils and small kitchen accidents. Raymond tried shaping the pancakes, though the results were far from conventional. Serena smirked quietly as Daniel burst into laughter, watching milk spill across the counter. It was the first Sunday all three had woken up under the same roof. Raymond had slept on the couch, Serena's rule, but it didn't feel like a visit. It felt like home, like something new finding its rhythm. Serena set the table with careful attention to detail, plates aligned, cold juice, pancakes made from collective effort. It wasn't about the meal, it was about the moment. With quiet confidence, she announced that this would be the first of many Sunday dinners, a tradition, a fixed meeting point, even on uncertain days. Raymond looked up, surprised by the idea. Daniel, excited, raised his hand like he was taking a solemn oath. Serena looked at them both, smiling, steady. They were in. The table was set with the kind of care that can't be bought. Daniel folded the napkins. Raymond poured the grape juice. Serena placed the tray in the center. Nothing was fancy, but everything had meaning. When they sat down, there was a moment of silence, not the silence of awkwardness, but the kind that comes right before something important. Serena looked around and took a deep breath. She said that even without realizing it, she'd been waiting for this moment. Across the table, Raymond gently squeezed Daniel's hand under the table. He said they had this now, and they were going to keep it. Daniel looked at them, fork in hand. He said it was the first time he'd had them both beside him, at the same time. It was a simple sentence, but it carried a weight all of them felt. Serena masked the emotion by serving plates. Raymond cleared his throat and said quietly that Daniel deserved this, every single day. After lunch, Daniel curled up on the couch with his new book. Serena cleared the table while Raymond dried the dishes. They moved in quiet harmony, like a routine that had already taken root, even without them noticing. Raymond looked at Daniel, then back at Serena. He asked if their son was happy. She said yes, more than she could ever put into words. And when he asked if she was okay, she finally said what she'd been feeling in silence. She was at peace. And for someone who had lived so long in defense, that was already everything. He stepped closer, asked gently if she felt comfortable with them, not just as parents, but as something more. Serena didn't answer right away. She simply said he didn't need an answer right then. But he asked again, softly, persistently. So she shared something she'd never said aloud, that Raymond had come into their lives wounded, but never demanded anything. He didn't try to be fixed. He just stayed. He insisted. And deep down, that's what she needed. Someone who didn't run. Raymond lightly touched her arm, confirming that he was here, and he wasn't going anywhere. "I'm not leaving," he said. She believed him. They sat side by side. Serena was still gathering the last of the silverware. Raymond, quiet for a moment, shared a memory. The last time he saw a woman make pancakes on a Sunday, it was his wife. She had made Daniel laugh with ease, and for a long time he believed he'd never see that again. But that morning, watching Serena and Daniel, he realized some things do return, just in new forms with new strength. Serena took a deep breath. She said she didn't want to take anyone's place. Raymond replied simply, she didn't have to. She had built her own, a new place. And it was theirs. She held his hand for a few seconds, then asked with a shy smile if he wanted to stay for movie night. He accepted, on one condition. He got to pick the movie. Serena warned that silly comedies were off limits. From the couch, Daniel chimed in, suggesting a cartoon. Serena agreed without hesitation. Cartoons, after all, were a family favorite in this house that was just starting to take shape. The sky darkened slowly, washed in orange tones. The home smelled of soap, coffee, and vanilla. Serena lit a small candle in the corner of the living room. Just a simple candle, but the scent reminded her of childhood. Raymond pulled a blanket over and sat beside Daniel on the couch. Serena took the other side. The television cast a soft glow across the room, but their attention wasn't on the screen. It was on the moment. As the credits rolled, Daniel nestled between them. "Can I ask something?" he said sleepily. "Of course, sweetheart," Serena replied. "When the new house is ready, will we all live there together?" Raymond looked at Serena. She was silent for a second. "If that's what you want, we'll make it happen," she said. "I want that," Daniel whispered. Raymond kissed his forehead. "Then that's what we'll do." Daniel closed his eyes with a smile. Serena rested her head on Raymond's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her. Outside, city lights flickered on one by one. But in that small living room, something else glowed. Something that didn't come from street lamps or switches. It was the light of three people who, through different paths, had found each other in the dark. Some stories don't need a perfect beginning, just a place at the table where everyone fits. And now in that room with messy blankets and half-finished pancakes, they had exactly that. Weeks passed like pages carried by the wind. What was once a frame of concrete and beams was now rising in shades of comfort. The house was ready. On a golden late afternoon, Serena, Daniel, and Raymond walked through the front door together. The scent of fresh paint still lingered, but so did the perfume of the flowers Serena had picked for the garden: lavender, rosemary, jasmine. Daniel rolled slowly through the hallway, wide-eyed, exploring every corner like he was stepping into the pages of a brand new book. His brown hair fell over his forehead as his fingers brushed the freshly painted wall, like he was memorizing the texture of what was now home. "Smells like a beginning," he said quietly, eyes sparkling. Serena smiled, one of those smiles that starts in the eyes before it reaches the mouth. There was a light in her face, even tired, and a softness that only comes when the heart has finally found rest. "A new beginning," she said. Raymond closed the door softly and pulled something from his pocket. A small silver ring, simple, with a pale blue stone. Nothing extravagant, just sincere. He walked toward her in the kitchen, where they stood watching Daniel flip through a cookbook at the new table. "Serena," she turned to him, her eyes already new. "I'm not perfect, but I built this house thinking about everything I still want to become." She leaned against the doorframe, didn't answer, just looked at him. Raymond held out the ring. His eyes, steady but full, met hers with the vulnerability of a man who had finally stopped trying to control everything. His dark hair fell slightly over his forehead, tousled from the evening wind. There was a small, almost timid smile on his lips. "Marry me?" Serena took a breath. Her heart thudded loud in her chest. She looked at Daniel, then back at Raymond. Her brown eyes, lit by the sun pouring through the window, were full of stories that had finally found a place to land. A few loose strands framed her face, and her smile was a yes before she even spoke. "Only if we keep making pancakes every Sunday." "Deal." Daniel smiled from behind his book. "Can I be the best man?" "You'll be the main man," Raymond replied. That night, they slept in the new house for the first time. All three in the same room, mattresses on the floor. Nothing was in its place yet, but everything already made sense. The moon filtered in through the bare window. Serena rested her head on Raymond's shoulder. Daniel, nestled between them, murmured sleepy words they couldn't quite make out. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For not leaving." Raymond kissed the top of her head. "This is where I stay." Outside, the world rushed on. But inside that house on that quiet night, time bent to hold only the details. Daniel's steady breathing, tangled feet beneath the blanket, and the good kind of silence. the kind you find when you finally come home. And there, in that stillness so full of life, love rested and began again. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to start again, with love, with presence, with heart. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what it meant to you. Remember to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And if you're ready for another story of emotion and hope, click the first card or the second one to watch the full playlist. See you there.